Welcome, everybody, to the Sports Experience, hosted by me, Dom DiTolla, and
Chris Quinn.
Excellent. This podcast here, we discuss some of sports' most interesting, most controversial, and most weird topics. And today we're just going to dive right into Major League Baseball's hit king, Pete Rose, who probably has one of the most checkered pasts as far as off-field things in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, Pete Rose has to be the figure that you put out in front of baseball that is so controversial, and he's like he's the hit king.
Yeah.
Most games played, most games won. I mean, he's history in baseball.
Exactly. No, I mean, you would think 6 years after he retired, he'd be a first ballot guy in Cooperstown in the Hall of Fame, but let's just say some other stuff got in the way when he was player manager of the Cincinnati Reds.
Well, let's start off with him as a young kid, because I found out something that I thought was interesting. The Reds actually drafted him as a favor.
Yeah.
So his uncle was like connected with the Reds somehow and was like, "Hey, can you please draft my nephew?" And they were like, "Fine, we'll draft him." And then he had 3 consecutive 350 batting averages in the minor leagues, and they were like, "All right, fine, we'll promote him."
Yeah, I know. It's crazy, right?
It's ridiculous.
No, like he obviously from Cincinnati originally. I mean, his uncle was a bird dog scout for the Reds. Almost reminds me of Mike Piazza and how he was drafted by the Dodgers because his dad was like best friends with Tommy Lasorda at the time.
It makes me think of how many players got passed over because they just didn't see their professional heart or whatever, Pete Rose had above all those other players.
Oh, I know. It's crazy.
When he came into the minor league, I forget the shortstop or the second baseman that he took over, but
Don Blasingame. Yeah, he was on I think their 61 pennant winning team.
Yeah. And literally one of the other players was just like, Pete just ran him out of the stadium. Like he literally out hustled him for the entire and that's how he got his name.
Exactly.
Mickey Mantle hit a home run, and it was clear over the fence, and Pete still ran and tried to catch it and jumped into the wall. And Mickey was like, "The hell's up with this kid?" Started calling him Charlie Hustle.
Yeah, him and Whitey Ford came up with that because in baseball at the time, I mean, even now they have all their unwritten rules, as far as rookies and enthusiasm and hard charging, hustling and stuff like that. And he just, they did it as a nickname of derision, but he was like, "No, man, that's awesome."
I love it. I love how he took it. He knew exactly what they were saying. He took it and was just like, "I am Charlie Hustle. I am going to outrun everybody on here. And when I get a walk, I'm going to sprint down to first." I watched a couple of videos of those because that just in my mind, I'm like, why would he do that? But you see him, he's just so into the game.
Oh, yeah. Like a Hall of Fame second baseman. He played with him on the Big Red Machine in the 70s with the Reds. Joe Morgan always said, wasn't the most talented guy, but he played every game like the 7th game of the World Series.
Yep.
And just busted ass and was so awesome. Just absolutely incredible.
What somebody said about him once I thought was so perfect. It was, Pete Rose plays as if he was like a fan getting pissed at somebody that isn't hustling.
Right.
You know what I mean? He was just like, if I was going to play, I would hustle every play. That's what Pete Rose plays like a fan.
Yeah, like that drunk guy in Section 8G. Oh, these guys don't hustle. Screw that. But it's like, no, he actually did it. I remember when I played baseball, when I would get a walk, every single time, if it was a pass ball on the walk on ball 4, I would run to first base, see what the catcher was doing, and then try and take second.
Yeah,
why not?
Why not?
Don't be lazy.
Don't be lazy. No, yeah, that was even though he was extremely controversial, when he was playing baseball, he was one of the best, and without a doubt, one of the least talented.
Oh yeah, no, I mean he was a singles hitter. There was a quote from him in the early '60s when he first started playing. He's like, "I'm going to be the first singles hitter to drive a Cadillac." And
it did.
Yeah, damn right he did.
Yeah.
I mean, 3 batting titles. I mean, just an incredible player. And the versatility with him was amazing as far as fielding.
I was going to say, I think he won 5 Golden Gloves, all in different positions. I think he's the only player to ever do that. So I think he won it at first, second, shortstop, third, and left field.
Oh yeah, no, it's
something like that. It might have been 4 positions.
No, it is 5. He made 5 All-Star teams at 5, or he made, I think, 17 or 18 All-Star teams, but he was an All-Star at 5 positions.
That's what it is.
First, second, third, and both corner outfield spots.
That All-Star game where he plows the catcher is such an iconic, and his reasoning behind it is so his mentality towards the game.
He just wants to win.
Yeah, if you don't know, I think it was the 78 All-Star game or something like that.
I think 1970.
70?
Yeah,
was that?
1970,
Okay.
yeah. Ray Fosse was catching for the Indians, and he scores the winning run and take it away.
And Pete Rose's wife at the time was like, we literally had dinner with Fosse and his wife the night before. And they were like, oh, yeah, that's great. We'll see you tomorrow at the game. And he literally just... I think he's like injured him a tiny bit, not crazy, but I think he like.
No, I mean what he did, because I mean he, ran over him like a train. Back when that was still legal in baseball, before Buster Posey ruined everybody's fun. But no, ran right into him and screwed up his shoulder. Fosse was never the same after that.
Oh damn!
I mean he later played for Oakland and was on those early 70s championship teams, like with Reggie Jackson and all that. But no, he was just never the same player after that. And, people really went after Rose in the media and fans being like, it's an all-star game. It doesn't matter. But he was just so laser focused. He's like, tried to win the game.
He couldn't play any other way.
No, not at all.
And I think that led into his gambling. So we're going to start getting into his dark deeds. And he was such a compulsive gambler.
Yeah.
That it really ruined his career. I mean,
like an addict. I mean, this wasn't something like, I'm sure we'll discuss it in later episodes. Back in the 19-teens, there was like with the Black Sox, obviously, they weren't gambling addicts, trying to, throw games. They were just getting paid nothing, and their owner was a total cheapskate.
Yeah, their owner actually stiffed him on a World Series bonus he was supposed to give him, and that's why they were like, fine. Screw you,
Yeah, like we're gonna throw it, but I mean, like with Rose, it's completely different. This guy was just like, addicted to the action, no matter what it was. Women, baseball, playing the ponies, and sports.
Yeah, if this was more, if he was more in the woke times, I bet they would be like, oh, he was a gambling addict. We gotta forgive him,
dude. I was just thinking about that today. Cause, like everyone, like, oh, well, we won't, get rid of him. Let's find him some help and take pity on him and not, treat him like garbage.
Well, I want to talk about why he was suspended for life. So what happened was he was the manager of the Reds, and he was betting on baseball. And I think it was ex-players and some of his friends.
Yeah, a lot of his friends, particularly out of a Gold's Gym.
Gold's Gym.
Who were trying to help him, like who would place the bets for him so it wouldn't seem, as obvious.
And he got busted, obviously, because that's illegal to gamble on any... I don't know if it's illegal to gamble on any sports, but it's obviously illegal to gamble on baseball while you're involved in it. Yeah,
it's one of those things where that's plastered in every major league clubhouse around the league. Like post 1920... that's the biggest no-no that you can probably do, even more than PEDs or anything.
Yeah, there's unwritten rules, and then there's written rules where they're like, hey, and it's more of the integrity of the game because they really have to uphold that.
Yeah, and I mean, unfortunately for him, he was betting on Reds games. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily to lose, but it's just like, you see with college basketball and point shaving, you're affecting the outcome of the game because you have the money riding on it.
Well, I heard one of the people from the Gold's Gym say that he was so bad at betting other sports that he had to bet baseball because he actually knew baseball and he could make money off of it, and that was like supporting his gambling habit. Yeah. So the commissioner tried to call him in, and this is the other thing was at that point there was almost like a hatred or like a battle between the players and the owners. Mm-hmm. The players were trying to get more money, more free agency,
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, at that time in baseball, as far as all the 4 major professional sports are concerned, as far as the unions go, baseball's is the strongest. Like, at that, when you look back, it's like, okay, they were earning peanuts, but compared to the other sports, they actually they're united and their representatives go to bat for them.
That's what they were saying about Pete Rose when he went to Philly for that 1 year. He was like the first hired gun, and I think they paid him like $800,000. And in those, for a professional sports player for 1 year, that was like crazy money.
Oh yeah.
So like that's why, because he had so much power and they had so much power, the players union, I think they really tried to bring the hammer down, and he turned his nose up at him. He was almost like, I'm history. You ain't going to do shit.
Oh, totally. Yeah. The funny thing about the commissioner, I don't know if you know who that guy is. Bart Giamatti.
Giamatti?
Yeah.
Yep.
That's Paul Giamatti's dad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy.
I'll tell you what, I thought I never knew this. He got the job 4 months or so before he gave him his lifetime ban, and then had a heart attack and died 2 weeks later.
Yeah. And a lot of people consider that him dying, that ended any sort of like discussion afterwards.
Which there should have been. Because
absolutely.
Obviously people were like, whoa, that's way too harsh. And this was right after, so a bunch of the players from the 50s got involved with a bunch of gambling casinos and were being spokesmen, and they're like, hey, you need to stop that.
Mickey Mantle was
the big
yeah.
one. Yep. And they told him they need to stop that. So it was kind of the same. They were like, hey, we need to get away from gambling. So he tried to like make this like hammer statement, and I'm pretty sure everybody thought that he was going to go back and be like, all right, we're going to relieve some of this and and make it not as harsh. And then he died.
And then he died, I think, maybe just over a week after he had Rose sign the document for ineligibility.
Yep.
And since then, that was 89. Yeah, 89. And he has been banned from baseball as far as no Hall of Fame eligibility, can't manage, can't do anything like that.
Which is insane. And they said that even if the lifetime ban is lifted, he can't get into the Hall of Fame outside of the veterans vote.
Yeah, the Veterans Committee,
and they hate him.
Hey everybody, just want to take a quick break to let you know that our Sports Experience podcast is brought to you by Engle Studio here, and they're here in Tucson for all your recording needs. Oh, yeah. No, I think a big reason why they hate him, though, is for probably about 15 or so years until his, like, kind of tell-all came out, he was saying he never bet on baseball.
Yeah,
like,
he kept denying it.
Yeah, he kept denying, and it was, like, hardcore denying it. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know if you remember that, I think it was during the either World Series or the All-Star game in 99, Jim Gray took a lot of heat from it on NBC because he like point blank asked him, because this was like a ceremony for all of the best baseball players of the 20th century. Mm-hmm. It was the all-century team. Pete Rose made it. Like, I mean, one of the most successful baseball players ever. And he's just like, I think everyone wants to know, did you bet on baseball? Just like came out with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously the wrong time for it, but hey.
No, I mean, everybody wanted to know.
I know that's the thing is, well, I feel like everyone did know. That's why everybody was so mad at him.
Yeah.
And that's why I think he was such a compulsive gambler. He was like, even though it was so obvious, he was still like, no, I didn't. It was just like, are you kidding? Like,
and he was always gambling even as a player before he even became a player coach.
Yep.
Too. And it's crazy to think, because I had looked it up. When he was in Cincinnati, I think he coached about 4 or 5 years. Every full season that he coached, they finished no lower than second. He has a lifetime above 500 winning percentage as a coach while he was betting on games.
He has an absolutely great understanding of baseball. You could just see the way he plays, the way he knows what. He is ridiculous. I still can't believe he's not in the Hall of Fame. It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous that he's not in, particularly considering the PED stuff, and there's likely some players who took PEDs. And baseball has a long history of performance-enhancing drugs. From the 50s to about the 80s, it was amphetamines.
Yeah, it was something called greenies.
Greenies, yeah.
They would get prescribed.
All the clubhouse managers had them. We'll
get into that.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
Yeah.
It's a very good story in a later episode. But no, and then the greenies, and then the cocaine came, and then the steroids. And
you forgot about the LSD and the no-hitters. Come on, man. We'll get into it all.
Well, greenies were a big part of that story, actually.
Yeah, because he was up on them.
Exactly.
It's ridiculous. But that's why, looking back, we really should have some perspective and be like, hey, this is the best ball player that isn't in the Hall of Fame. There's so many ball players that are in there, not that shouldn't be in there, but that have done worse things.
Oh, Ty Cobb is in the Hall of Fame.
I mean, geez, Ty Cobb he was a notorious piece of shit.
Oh, totally. Yeah, no. But really the thing that I think that everyone's so mad at him about and why he'll probably never get in is since Landis banned all those White Sox players, the commissioner at the time in 1920, that signs on the door inside every clubhouse. I mean, he admitted to it now. I'm sure if he came clean back in the late 80s, I think he might have been reinstated if he off the bat just said, hey, I fucked up.
Yeah.
You know? But now there's probably no hope for him. Or they're going to be jerks and then let him into the Hall of Fame out of spite, like after he dies.
Yeah, I think if they lift his ban, I just don't think they're going to let him in the Hall of Fame because of the people who would have to vote on him.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, at what point would they just have a change of heart? And there's probably no chance for that. And the guy had 4,200 hits.
It's crazy.
Like
the image that I can't get out of my head with Pete Rose is him diving into third. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like, in my mind, he's like 5 feet in the air, but he's really like a foot off the ground. But in my mind, he's just like diving with all of his might to get to that base. And it's like,
the intensity is sells it. Like, as a fan, you just love to see it. Like,
I loved it. Yeah.
Because, a lot of guys, who are super talented, they just make stuff look easy and nonchalant, and he just has that look on his face, and just like, that he's busting ass out there.
Yep, just true grit.
Oh, totally.
We got to talk, though, about, and this was right around when he came back from the Phillies to the Reds. Mm-hmm. He had the stupidest haircut.
Oh, man.
He looks straight up idiotic.
Yeah, if you Google a picture of Pete Rose, he basically has like a thicker Lloyd Christmas from Dumb and Dumber haircut.
That's exactly what I was thinking. He is the prototype for Lloyd Christmas. They were like, look, man, we want it to look like this, but a little bit less.
Yeah, right? Oh, my God.
And it makes me think of that Motley Crue story where this is going to be kind of off the rails, but hey, we're going to go.
Yeah.
Where they were talking about how they stopped showering for multiple months in a row and how they smelt disgusting and they would still get girls all the time. And it just makes me think of Pete Rose walking in and girls just being like, fuck yes. And he looks...
He looks kind of like, okay, like the best way to describe him, he's probably like about 5'9", 200 pounds, but he's like kind of squat looking, particularly later in his career. He looks like a lawn gnome in a baseball uniform.
Yeah, he's thick.
Like without a beard, yeah.
Yeah, he looks ridiculous.
And you're like, this guy got 230 hits in a season and won 3 batting titles? Are you kidding me? Mm-hmm. Because it's not like somebody like Tony Gwynn who just like gained weight as he got older,
Yeah.
Like Pete Rose looked the same for like 15 years.
And has so many ridiculous records. I think he has like, God, I forget exactly what it was, but I think it was like 44 hits.
Oh no, he set the National League most consecutive games hit streak. 44. Yeah, he had 44 in a row, and DiMaggio holds the big league record for both leagues at 56. But I don't think anybody's got more than 40 since he did that. No.
Yeah.
A couple guys have had 30 since that time. But yeah.
That's just the laser focus. Every game, he's playing as hard as he can.
Yeah. Well, and if you think about it, to get 3,000 hits is like a huge milestone in baseball. So if you think about it, if you play baseball for 20 years, if you play baseball for 15 years, you have a 15-year career, you have to get 200 hits in a season for that entire time. Also, as far as that's concerned, getting 200 hits in a 162 game season, it's ridiculous.
And I think that's something in like the 375 batting average to get 200 hits.
Yeah. No, I mean,
it's you have to literally be a great hitter to get in the. And what does he have? 42 over 20 seasons. How many hits does he have?
4256.
4256. It's insane.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely ridiculous to keep to maintain that level of play.
There was no drop off.
No, just see ball, hit ball, and have good, form at the plate, because that's just what he did. And I mean, he batted leadoff during his prime for some of the best baseball teams. Like in the 1970s, the Reds had just an absolute powerhouse, and like just a team guy too. The season that they won their first world championship with him, he moved from left field to third base, because they wanted to keep him in the lineup, but they also wanted to bring in George Foster to play left field, who for a very long time, before the steroid era, was the only National Leaguer who had 50 homers in a season. Mm-hmm. So, it's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, the versatility, everything that he would do to a baseball club, outside of betting.
Outside of betting, yeah.
Some of the best.
No, totally.
Like, you would put him in a discussion with top 3 in almost every category. That's what's absolutely crazy.
While he finished with an over 300 lifetime average, like anything over 300, you're an elite hitter. But he played until he was 45. You take away those like maybe last 5 seasons of his career, obviously you don't have the 42-56 as far as being the hit king for Major League Baseball. He's probably batting like 320, 330.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's like Ted Williams numbers. It's crazy.
Well, Ted unfortunately he served in 2 wars, so his numbers could have been astronomically better. Like, he could have been in the 700 home run club, RBIs, everything else. But no, Pete Rose was one of the best baseball players ever, and
was able to play his entire career. That's the thing about those guys through the 40s, 50s.
Yeah,
is they got a couple of years cut off, and then whatever, the wars. We understand. We understand war here at this podcast. Yeah, Pete Rose, man. If you want to get behind any cause out there, it's get Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame. Yeah,
he deserves to be there. Definitely breaking that cardinal rule will probably never get him in because of, baseball's long-standing. And they had to really enforce it, in 1920, because guys were throwing games. Guys were fixing games. They were suspending people.
It was getting out of hand in that early, but they were being paid so little. It was such a shitty, like they were working day jobs and then going and playing at night and that kind of stuff.
I've seen some rumors that in 1918, the Cubs threw the World Series against the Red Sox.
I heard that one
of that
too.
Team, yeah, that they went out. So I mean, it wasn't a new thing. They just needed somebody to come in
and put the hammer down.
Yeah,
like with Charlie Hustle.
Yeah, Charlie Hustle. What the hell?
I mean,
it's terrible.
It's terrible.
He won 3 World Series. I mean.
That's why I keep bringing up the time where he goes to the Phillies, because the time with the Reds, he was built into this team.
Yeah.
When he went to the Phillies, he just goes, they needed a leader to like flat out be like, hey, we need to hustle every play.
Yeah.
And that's what he did, and they went in and won a World Series.
Well, if you look at the 1975 World Series he won with the Reds, he was MVP. That's considered by many to be the best World Series ever played. Like, a great story about that is, I don't know if any listeners are familiar, but in Game 6 of that World Series, Carlton Fisk of the Red Sox hit a home run to win the game, like a walk-off. It's iconic. He's waving his arms as it goes, hits the foul pole next to the Green Monster. And during the game, though, Fisk is obviously a catcher, so he's behind the plate. Pete Rose is batting, and, everything's on the line. Reds win, they win the World Series. Red Sox win, live to fight another day in a winner go home Game 7. And all Pete Rose was doing was just chatting him up like, isn't this great, man? Oh, man, this is so fantastic. Oh, baseball is the greatest thing ever. Just during like the most important.
Straight up fan.
Yeah.
That's just because he is. And I bet other players couldn't realize the amazing situation they were in. They were like trying to be focused, but he was so already focused.
Well, he had in Game 7 of that World Series, he had a huge base hit, which tied the game. Ken Griffey Jr.'s dad actually scored on the play on a single to center field. But as I know you referenced the Phillies, like how they said they needed to hustle and all that. For those of you not into baseball, throughout the 70s, the Phillies were really good. I mean, in the AL East, obviously they had to compete with the Pirates and in that specific division, and there were no wild cards. But they lost a lot of LCSs, particularly to the Dodgers. Mm-hmm. And they just could not get over the hump. And up until 1980, that franchise had never won a World Series. Pete Rose comes in.
I think it was the first pennant in 50 years. It was something like that, and then first World Series.
Yeah, the last pennant for them was 1950.
All right, so 20 years or 25 years, whatever it was, But yeah, that he just changed the landscape of teams.
He changed the culture. All the players that played for him liked him. I mean, they all spoke highly of him as a manager.
Yeah.
I mean, and
it would be kind of crazy to have seen what he could have done as a manager.
Well, it's funny because he's out in 89, mm-hmm. and the Reds up until that point were finishing second in the old NL West to all these teams and just not really necessarily breaking through. But the season after he left, the Reds won the World Series. Wire to wire, they were in first place.
Mm-hmm.
And
he built that team. And
yeah, no disrespect to Lou Piniella, who's a fantastic manager in his own right, but he walked into something ready-made, like ready to go. And, Eric Davis, Paul O'Neill, those guys, I mean, just great team. It's a great team.
Yeah. All right. I think that's our first episode of the Sports Experience. I'm Chris Quinn.
I'm Dom DiTolla. Don't bet on things if you're not allowed to.
Oh yes, please stay away from the bookies.
Yes, they will break your legs. And don't write personal checks that were featured in the Dowd report, which pretty much just screwed him over.
Yeah, just the one last thing about Pete Rose. People say they pay off their bookies to not be known as a compulsive gambler. Pete Rose would tell his bookies to stick it. So that's why they all came out and was like, hey, he's a compulsive gambler. Tell him to screw off, All right. Thank you all very much.
Take it easy.